What's up, everybody? I don't know what that was. Goals versus time invested. And I'm talking about the goals that parents have of their players and the time that they invest for their kids to reach those goals. Yeah, let's see where this goes. What's up, everybody? Coach White here, SFBA Sports Performance, new podcast episode here I'm doing. Solo, obviously. I wanted to talk about the expectations that parents have of their players and the level of improvement and the level of play that they see or that they witness when they watch them play in real games, and then the time that they invest for their kids to improve in those areas. Number one, do the parents feel like the time that their kids are putting into getting better is that helping them reach the goals? Do they feel like realistically that time is enough time? The work they're doing in that time, is that the right type of work? All these questions I kind of want to ask. Are they doing the right type of work? I think I just said that. We, with SFBA Sports Performance, I send out a form to all the families whose kids will be in our AAU basketball program, our club basketball program, and then our summer camp. And interestingly enough, about 70% of the families said their kids practice 2 or less times per week. Now, that could be 0, 1, or 2 days per week outside of team practices to work on their skills and to improve their game. 70%. That threw me off a little bit. I looked at that and said, that can't be right. And about 21% said they train about once a week. About 29% said they rarely train at all outside of practice. I talked to a few parents also who kind of confirmed that when I met with them on Zoom, whose kids will be attending our summer camp, and they said their kids only have time to train during practice. They don't train outside or practice outside of that. It's just 2 practices a week, and they've been doing this for like the last year or two, and they're not seeing progress. And to me, it's not surprising to me that their kids aren't improving with that for several reasons. And you're like, 2 practices a week, that should be enough to get better. Yes, it should be, if things are done the right way and in the right scenario, right, and for the right player. So let me get into this. First of all, I want to say this before I go on, so people don't think I'm just like telling you like you're all terrible, work harder. Let's throw it with this first. It's not necessarily a problem if your kid doesn't practice all the time outside of team practice, right? So I'll go there. Not every kid needs to train every day. Not every kid needs to be the kid in the gym every day. Not every kid wants that. But what it does bring up is a really important question, I think, for athletes and parents is, if your kid isn't, do your expectations match the amount of time that they're putting in to getting better? Right? When you watch your kid play during a game and you're sitting there, are you just frustrated and a little bit angry and confused at why they're not as good as other players, why they're not doing the right things, why they're still confused, why they look lost, why they look like they have no confidence, why they can't shoot, why they keep missing layups? And if that's the case, if you look at an entire week or an entire season or off season, can you go back and think of all the times your kid has been putting in real work to get better at those things? Or is it, my kid's too busy, they have this, or I can't make it, or there's not enough time, or we didn't feel it was important? If the answer isn't they've been doing work and they've been trying to get better at that, then I can understand the expectation and the frustration. I could. I heard this quote one time from somebody. I don't know who said it, and I might get it wrong. I'm kind of paraphrasing here. But he was talking about how people get mad when they shoot the basketball and miss, right? And I was like, yeah, I do that. If I miss a couple shots, I'm already getting mad at myself and like talking to myself. So I get that. But it's like, yeah, if you're not spending every day working on your game and working on shooting like every day, why are you mad when you miss? Like, what are you mad for? Like, you don't put the time in to get better, so why do you expect that you'd be a good shooter? Like, what are you really mad about? It'd be like if I went ahead and played an NBA player one-on-one. I'm getting destroyed. It's not a question. I'm getting destroyed, right? There's nothing I can do to beat anybody in the NBA at any level, right? Nothing. And so if I played one-on-one with somebody and they beat me and I'm like getting mad, I can't believe this. People look at me crazy like, you should have expected to lose. Like, you're not on this level. I'm not. And the majority of human beings on earth aren't. They're not on that level. So I say that to say is, if you're watching your kids play basketball and you're upset that your kid isn't as good as the best player on the team, well, do you put in enough time for your kid to be as good as the best player on the team. Like, what did they do? Like, I had a kid on my team one time years ago who used to play for me, like in the 3rd grade, and he was already pretty good at basketball at that age. Like, the separation between him and the next best player on the team, it was clear. And I asked his dad, like, what do you do? How come your kid is already this good at basketball? And he's like, well, we go to the gym at 6 a.m. And I was like, okay. So he's been putting in work, right? And the dad, you can tell he was one of those guys that, he'd work with his kid, early, help him with the fundamentals and the skills, and was really on him about stuff. But in a good way, though. Like, he wasn't one of those like overbearing parents. At least not that I thought. I thought he was like a good mixture of accountability and work, but also, kind of letting his kid do his thing. And right now he's playing in high school, and I'm really proud of him for that. Hats off. I knew he'd play in high school from an early age, but yeah, it's good to see him continue that road. I know he's going to keep playing for a long time. But I say that to say the work that they put in, the time they put in outside of practice matched the goals. If he didn't have a good game, his dad was on him a little bit. If he had a good game, he was still on him a little bit because the expectations were there. But the work outside of that, out of our practices, outside of games, it was there, all right? And a lot of families, that's not the case. They're upset without the time put in to be upset, I feel like. Your kid goes to practice and you think that's enough sometimes, and they're not one of the better players on the team. And as a coach, you try to do everything to help get them up. But it's hard because when you're preparing for games and you're trying to get them ready, you don't have time to sit there and treat it like a one-on-one session. Like, yes, we do work on shooting, we work on finishing at the basket, we work on passing, we work on all those things, right? Like every team does. And then you try to find the skill sets where your team needs the most when you're in practices so you don't waste time. And then what really plays into the offense and defense you guys run. So all the drills kind of carry over to those. But yeah, if your kid's already one of the lower players on the team, on the roster, and they're not getting a ton of minutes, it's going to be hard for them to step up unless they're doing things outside of just practices to get better. And just to expect that, they just need more playing time, coach. It's like, no. No. Like, if your kid was in boxing and they just kept getting beat up every time they had a match, would you be like, he just needs more fights? Like, no, your kid doesn't know how to box. Like, first of all, they can't throw a jab. They don't know how to read. They're got the wrong footwork. They're, everything. They got their hands in the wrong space. They're not just going to figure it out by getting beat up every single day. Maybe they'll kind of pick up some tips. But for the most part, they're just going to walk in there and just be like, I'm not getting hit, and then want to quit. So basketball, obviously, you're not beating up kids over there. But at the same time, if your kid's not doing that well or constantly not able to achieve certain skill sets on the court in games, they're going to lose confidence and not going to play that much. And so what do? They say, I got to find trainers. I got to do training sessions. I got to go to clinics and camps. And those are all helpful. If those are helpful and done the right way, I think they're great. But honestly, I think a lot of times if kids can focus on some basic stuff, like if your kid can shoot the basketball, they're going to play for anybody. Your defense can be okay or not that great, but if you can shoot the basketball, they're going to find a spot for you. And a lot of parents, I feel like, don't take the time just to get their kids some shots up. I don't care really how a kid shoots the basketball. You probably won't hear this. A lot of coaches talk about shooting form and stuff. I could care less, honestly. I might give a kid some pointers and some tips, but I tell them 2 things. Feet got to be balanced, follow through is there. The rest of it, I don't care. Shoot blindfolded for all I care. Unless a kid comes in and is super motivated to work on their shooting form, and they came to me or one of our coaches for that and said, hey, I want to work on this, and they would really approach it that way seriously and would actually try to apply it every time they shot it, then I'd be like, hey, let's work on it. But you see kids go to camps and clinics all the time, and they'll spend like an hour working on shooting form, and then they play basketball and it all just dies. Like, none of it's remembered, none of it's retained. They just do whatever they do. That's why for me, my focus has been more on like, how do I teach the game, like what they see on the court, versus like, all right, your feet's got to be here, your elbow's here. And I know some people may argue against that, and I think there is a time and a place for working on things like that. But I feel like a lot of kids at this stage of the game just don't know what they're doing on the court. They don't know how to play the game. So if I spend all day working on like your right hand dribble, but you don't understand like other parts of the game, that's not going to matter. If we work on layups the whole time, but you can't get to the basket, or it's not your role, then we just spent time working on something you're not going to use. And then your ability to play the game is going to be decapitated because you're not going to have the ability to read when to cut to the basket, when to go this way, when to go that way, when to make these choices. So anyway, I'm getting off topic a little bit. Let me bring it back. Developmental and reality. Development and reality. Basketball is a skill sport. If an athlete is practicing twice a week and they're not getting work outside of that, and there are clear skills that they're missing when they're practicing and playing in games, part of the responsibility has to be that that kid's got to learn those things outside of practices. Um, Individual development, things like ball handling, shooting mechanics, finishing, footwork, decision making. These are all things that kids can do outside. When you go to school, you learn and then you get homework and you're tested. To me, school is the practice, homework is the time you spend on the court, and then the test is the games. But we think that, I can show up to a couple practices would be like I can show up to school a couple days a week, no homework at all, and then I'm gonna have as many tests as possible. Like, you would never do that, right? You probably think that your kid gets too many tests in school, right? And you're wondering why. The game is fun, but the game is the test. The game is the test, right? Not the practice and not the skill sessions. The game is the test. And the more time I have to practice, the more time I can spend in class, learning, soaking in the information, taking the information home, like practicing it on my own, seeing if I understand it, finding out what I get, what I don't get, and then going back to class the next day and then making sure that I understand the material and can carry this out and execute it. Like that's what it's supposed to be. Not like, let's give my kid like 10 more math tests, even though I keep failing it. It's like saying, let's give my kid like 4 more teams to play on so he gets 8 games on a weekend and then hope it works out. Like he's going to figure it out. Like, no, that's got to be I was going to say dumbest thing, but that's one of the dumbest things. I think I hear people say, my kid needs more games. They need more games. And I'm like, no, because your kid's playing in all these games, and every time after the game, you're just as frustrated. You're just as angry. You're just as tired of watching it, and your kid's losing more and more confidence. Like, you're draining their confidence because you're throwing them into situations that they're not ready for. They're unprepared. Would you have a pilot just fly more planes, and say just figure it out? If he wasn't ready yet, he didn't have his license, he didn't pass all his exams and get all his hours for flight training? No, like your life is on the line. Like you're expecting that the guy that's in the cockpit that's going to fly the plane from New York to San Francisco is highly trained, has done this for 40 plus years, knows the ins and outs of everything, can handle any situation, and is prepared. He's not some guy that just showed up and is like, well, I crashed the last couple, I got lucky, but the more I fly, I figured, I just figure it out, right? I got to get that flying experience. No, that doesn't work that way. But for some reason, we think it works that way in basketball or sports. It doesn't. Just because you think it does doesn't mean it does. I'll put that out there. Stamped, right? So yeah, it's important to understand that the perspective is, if your kid's going to play a sport like basketball at the AAU level, they've got to put in time outside of just playing. When kids play AAU basketball, you're playing against kids that want this, right? The best players you're playing against are kids that want this. And they work super hard. They work, days in and days out. And when parents say like, well, I just let my kid figure it out. It's on them. If they want this, they got to put the work in. Like, no, you're responsible for this too. Like when your kid has school, you don't just say like, well, they got to figure out how to get there every day. No, you get your kids to school every day, right? Part of it's because legally you're supposed to, right? Otherwise there's truancy involved and stuff like that. But like, you don't just say, well, just figure it out. Now, if there's a bus schedule and they get that, okay, cool. Like that's been arranged. But you make sure your kids get to school every day. Like you make sure they turn in the homework, hopefully. You check their grades and report card. So it's not just all on them. Parts of it are, but you're still a part of that process. You've got to fill out certain forms. Like it's still there. But then when it comes to basketball, sometimes we're like, well, I just let them figure it out. But then you have the same expectations. Like that doesn't make sense. So if you're going to expect your kid to do well in basketball and you want them to play at a certain level and you feel like there's a certain, frustration you have, ask yourself, are we putting in enough time away from the practices? If the practices aren't filling in certain gaps, let's see how we can fill in those other gaps away from practice. And that's going to require your time. It will. You will be tired. You will have to dedicate more time. You'll have to cut certain things out. But if you want your kid to get better at something, that's just what has to happen. If you can't do that, then ask yourself, do we want to do this? Should we be doing this? Is this the right environment? Just join a rec league and call it a day. You practice once a week, they play in a game. Half the kids play first quarter, half the kids play second quarter, and do the same thing in the second half. You're done. Everything is fine. But if you're going to throw them in a club basketball where there's an expectation, and winning is an obvious goal for teams, and success is often aligned with that, then you're going to have to really match the expectations of the best players, right? And if you're not going to do that, then you're going to have to ask yourself, are we wasting our time? Or are we willing to step up? So key messages here. Like a mom said this the other day, and it's the first time I've ever heard this perspective from a parent, and I wish more had it, because I feel like I spend more time explaining it this way than I hear from parents. And she said, yeah, my kid plays basketball. He's pretty good at defense. He doesn't get past the ball a lot, so he talks about that. But I told him, look, that just probably means your teammates don't trust you to shoot. So you've got to find a way to earn their trust to get the basketball so that they would pass it to you. So I told him this is a great challenge to find a way to make an impact another way. And I told him, like, why not just be the best defender? And now he's like one of the team's best defenders. And I was like, that's such a great perspective. A lot of times I get parents come to me and say, hey, like, some of these kids are unfair. They don't pass my kid the ball. My kid's kind of sad because nobody passed them the ball, or they're afraid to come out here because nobody passes the ball. And I'm like, in my head, I just want to be like, stop doing that. First of all, you having this conversation is what's helping your kid lose the confidence. The fact that we're even like reaching this stage of a conversation, I think, is just reinforcing to your kid that, oh, it's unfair to you. Poor you, I'm sorry. They're all unfair. They're all mean. Like, stop going to just them being mean. I think that's a cop-out, and I think that's just an easy way just to escape the fact that your kid isn't good enough yet. There, I said it, yeah, right? Hey, if your kid can't shoot the basketball, people know. If your kid makes bad decisions, other players know. And the goal isn't to pass the ball to the player that makes the worst decision on the court. It's to pass the ball to the person that knows what they're doing, right? But I tell parents oftentimes, like, your kid's got to find a way to make an impact that nobody else does. If your kid isn't that great at ball handling or shooting, then find another way to make an impact, like set good screens. Learn how to box out, learn how to rebound, learn how to be a better defender, learn how to dive on the floor, learn how to, like, there's a million things you can do in basketball besides just shooting. But if that's the one thing you're going to say, like, my kid doesn't want to play anymore or is afraid to play over here because no one passes him the ball, you're missing the point in a huge way. And again, I can go on and on about that, and that should be another topic, but it just comes down to, like, if that's a concern of yours, stop looking at it as if they're unfair and say, hey, you stepped into an environment where your expectation was you're supposed to be able to perform at the level that these guys are. You're not, so they're not going to reward you for that. I'm not going to pass the ball to the guy that can't shoot the best on the court. I'm going to try to find the guy that can, because I'm trying to do one thing, score. The more points we have, the more games you win. Like the old John Madden thing, like, the more touchdowns you score, the more you win. Like, it's like common sense, but it's like, to me, that's where it stands. So, yeah, I said a lot there. I hope that all kind of made sense, trying to tie it all together. But the key message, and this is for both parents and athletes, obviously. If an athlete wants to improve quickly and make higher levels on a team and become a standout player, they really got to think about the need to apply multiple skills that are necessary. And if they can't apply those skills and they're not good at those skills, they need to think about the time they're putting in to get better. If I need to become a better shooter, a better passer, a better rebounder, a better defender, a better ball handler, a better whatever, better help defender, all these things, I've got to put time in to make sure that I'm competent at these skills enough so that I don't hold my team back when we have an opportunity, and that I become an option and a threat against the other team because I am good at these skills. But if you're not, and you're just going to have the answer that it must be because my teammates are unfair, and you're going to be upset about it while you're sitting in the stands, you got to ask yourself, am I really allowing my kid to put the time in? And again, you're probably going to say, well, we're busy, we have this. That's great. But you put yourself in that environment. You put your kid in that environment. And you're left with the feelings. And so now the one thing you're searching for is, I want them to be more confident. I can't be confident if I'm not prepared. Can't be confident if I'm not ready. I can't be confident if I can't for sure know that the knowledge and skill sets I possess are good enough to accomplish a task. Right? When you walk into, I use this example, if you have a presentation, all right, you're about to give this big presentation to a company, and like everything's on the line. If you do great, then this other company's going to invest in you, and they're going to do all this stuff. So you come in, you've got all your stuff prepared, you've practiced everything, you have your slides ready, your presentation, all the handouts, you're ready for all the worst questions you can get and the best questions you can get. You've practiced your speaking, you know how to use your hand gestures, walk outside of the box, give eye contact, throw in a couple of jokes here and there to kind of lighten the mood a little bit, but then bring it back to perspective. You're like, I got this, I'm ready to go. Like, this is the deal, I'm the closer. But if you walk in there and all you see are just people staring at you, you forget your own name, you're not prepared, you're not ready, they ask you a question and you're just like frozen. Like, you didn't know, you didn't trust the information, you weren't ready, you haven't taken the time to prepare, you're lost, and people will see that. And it's not because they were unfair to you in your presentation, it's because you weren't ready. So we have to get out of this box of like blaming everybody else, blaming the coach, blaming the teammates, blaming the other team you're playing because they're in the wrong division, blaming the referees. Like, stop with all the other blaming stuff. if you want your kid to reach a certain level of play in a basketball game and you want to stop sitting in the stands feeling like you're watching the worst player on the court, which is your kid, then you've got to do things outside of just their practices or whatever else they're doing, because it's obviously not enough. It probably requires more, and it's not a fair thing. It's about like what's a required thing, right? Everybody starts from different levels. And if I have to get to a certain level, but I'm starting here and this kid started here, well then, Jesus, I've got to work a little bit more to get to that, right? So let me encourage you parents a little bit. As parents, one of the best things we can do is simply help our kids build consistent habits, right? Like as a coach, one of the things I try to do is I try to do things to help them build consistent habits. It doesn't always work out, but the hope is that they'll see those things over time, and that without realizing it, they'll realize that they're doing it too. Like I try to give all my players a handshake when I see them. Sometimes I forget here and there, and I try not to, or even the parents, I'll do that to them as well. Moms, dads, kids, whatever, and when players walk up to me, they're like, "Hello, Coach White," and they'll give me a handshake. And it's like consistently, they know like that's how I greet them. I'll say, "Hello, young man, how are you today?" "Hello, you sir," or young lady. But when it comes down to training outside of practice, it doesn't have to be like hours every day. 20 minutes of shooting at a park. Your kid gets out of school, spend the time. You just had a long day at work, spend 20 minutes with your kid. Have them get some shots and talk to them. How's your day going? How's everything? Everything cool? Or maybe you're planning for a trip. Hey, it's going to be exciting. Or work on some stuff specifically, right? 20 minutes. Like, it's 24 hours a day. If we can't spend 20 minutes, realistically, I know life is busy. 20 minutes, 15, 10 minutes, right? A quick stop at a park real quick by the house or at the school. 20 minutes. A quick ball handling routine. Go on YouTube, look it up. Like the amount of the access that people have to resources nowadays is crazy. I remember my mom got me, those door-to-door salesmen would come by and they would sell those encyclopedia books, right? And then one day my mom, she bought the whole set, right? And so I had it there, and I'm like, I got the knowledge. Everything that I ever need in the world is there. Then you realize that's not the case. There's still some information missing, right? But nowadays, like, you just go online, you can find anything. You can, type it in and it'll be like, I need to find this, and boom, instantly there. And then videos and examples and everything else. Those are helpful, right? Like, pick up a quick shooting drill or a quick ball handling drill online that kids can do on their own. Do it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it can be helpful. It could help them just with the coordination. It can just be a good time on the court. Playing some pickup games. I need to bring this back. I did this thing last year, and I haven't really been consistent about it. It was a Facebook group that I put up, and it was where parents can join it, and then they can just say, hey, I got a kid who's in a 4th grade. We live by this park. Anybody want to come by? And then people can just go. So I think I'm going to bring that back again somehow. But I need to. And that's a great way if you can just get kids together and just parents just step out the way and coaches let the kids just hoop. There's their playing time. There's the minutes you've been asking for. It's free. And then just getting up extra reps. If you have a hoop at the park or at the school, something like that, like just whatever it is. Like if you want to work on shooting, you can do shooting form without a basket. You can do that at home. You want to work on ball handling, go in the garage. Nowadays, they have those like quiet, silent basketballs that are kind of like foam, and you can bounce it. It doesn't sound like an earthquake in the house. Watching film, studying it. Like there's a million things you can do. Saying we don't have time is a cop-out. When I say that, it's also for me, right? Like I know I have time. I probably just allot that time to something that I didn't need, or maybe I get a little lazy here and there like most people do. But to say like I don't have time, like for me to believe that, like at the beginning of every high school season, you hear about teams from California flying to Florida to play a football game, right? And I hear kids like, I have too much homework. Like Mater Dei just flew to Florida or Texas to play against a team. And those kids are in high school, and they had to go there and play and get on the flight, and they still have homework. Like, what is your excuse? Like, honestly, like, let's stop with all this, my kids are too busy thing. I get there's busy, but I also understand that at the same time, if you have an expectation, you've got to figure it out. That's what being a student athlete is. And that's what anything is. Like, time has to be given. And if it's not given the right way, you're not going to achieve your goals. What's up, everybody? I don't know what that was. Goals versus time invested. And I'm talking about the goals that parents have of their players and the time that they invest for their kids to reach those goals. Yeah, let's see where this goes. What's up, everybody? Coach White here, SFBA Sports Performance, new podcast episode here I'm doing. Solo, obviously. I wanted to talk about the expectations that parents have of their players and the level of improvement and the level of play that they see or that they witness when they watch them play in real games, and then the time that they invest for their kids to improve in those areas. Number one, do the parents feel like the time that their kids are putting into getting better, is that helping them reach the goals? Do they feel like realistically that time is enough time? The work they're doing in that time, is that the right type of work? All these questions I kind of want to ask. Are they doing the right type of work? I think I just said that. We, with SFBA Sports Performance, I send out a form to all the families whose kids will be in our AAU basketball program, our club basketball program, and then our summer camp. And interestingly enough, about 70% of the families said their kids practice 2 or less times per week. Now, that could be 0, 1, or 2 days per week outside of team practices to work on their skills and to improve their game. 70%. That threw me off a little bit. I looked at that and said, that can't be right. And about 21% said they train about once a week. About 29% said they rarely train at all outside of practice. I talked to a few parents also who kind of confirmed that when I met with them on Zoom, whose kids will be attending our summer camp, and they said their kids only have time to train during practice. They don't train outside or practice outside of that. It's just 2 practices a week, and they've been doing this for like the last year or 2. And they're not seeing progress. And to me, it's not alarming to me that that's not happening, right? Or should I say this? It's not surprising to me that their kids aren't improving with that for several reasons. And you're like, 2 practices a week, that should be able to get better. Yes, it should be, if things are done the right way and in the right scenario, right? And for the right player. So let me get into this. First of all, I want to say this before I go on, so people don't think I'm just like telling you like you're all terrible, work harder. Let's throw it with this first. It's not necessarily a problem if your kid doesn't practice all the time outside of team practice, right?